Hello, and welcome to The Content Engine. We believe that every company needs to become a media company in order to thrive in today's business world. So the goal of this show is to teach you the mindset, strategies, and tools that you can leverage to build your own content empire. Today's guest is Ricky Holm. After a successful career as a filmmaker and video producer, Ricky founded Chocolate, Milk, and Donuts, an innovative VR and AR company that helps brands storytell who they are and create unforgettable experiences for their audience. Ricky, it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. How are you doing today?
It's a lovely Friday morning, and so can't complain.
Awesome. Well, to start off, there's all these words out there, buzzwords in the immersive video space. There's 360 video, there's VR, there's AR, and all these terms kind of get interchanged and blended. And so can you walk through what those terms mean and what the differences are between them?
Sure. So just to what your point was there is a lot of these, the buzzword right now is VR and AR. Everybody likes to throw those in their headlines. And what can be a little bit misleading for folks out there is that we're actually talking about three separate technologies. And these are three different tools that you can use in three different ways or blend them. And so the first one is 360 video, and that's very self-explanatory. It's a video, but it's in a sphere. It's a 360-degree video file. And then the next technology kind of in the line is virtual reality. In virtual reality, what makes it different than 360 video is the fact that it's fully interactive. And so what do I mean by that? Well, let's go back to 360 video. That's like riding shotgun in a race car. It's exhilarating, it's fun, it's exciting. It can be one hell of a ride, but you're in the passenger seat. You don't have any control over that experience. You're basically on rails. And in VR, or virtual reality, what's cool and unique is now you're in the driver's seat. You have control as the user to how you're going to interact with the things in that environment. And so those are the two really big differences between the two technologies, and the easiest way to differentiate them in your mind. The third technology is augmented reality. And what the difference is between this technology and the other two is it's not fully immersive. It's not just a standalone experience where you're just experiencing what's on the screen. What we're doing is we're actually augmenting digital artifacts over the real world. And so the easiest example of that is to think about as like Pokemon Go, right? Or you think of a football or soccer match and they show a replay and there's lines on the football field showing the route that the player ran. And so that in its simplest form is augmented reality. And those are the three very different technologies, but they're all similar in a way that they're the next kind of advancement of media in terms of being more immersive and creating more presence and more empathy.
So I see a lot of 360 video, and I've experienced some VR before, and some of them really feel like new experiences that you can only have with that technology, while others just feel like, let's just do 360 video or whatever just to do it.
Yeah.
Where do you see as the state of VR in particular as a new language, and kind of what needs to be developed in order for brands to understand how to really leverage this new platform?
Yeah. So I think with any emerging technology, right, it's when they first come out, it's very impressive and it's very awe-inspiring to an audience. And you don't have to create much value in your content. The fact that it's new and it's exciting and it's intriguing is enough to garner an audience, to get those views, to get those engagement numbers that you're looking for. But I think what's really important and what we need to focus on is the fact that when you build this content, you need to build it with a purpose. You need to understand why you're using this type of media. Why shoot this in 360 versus 2D traditional video? Or why build a fully immersive virtual reality experience versus maybe creating a video game? Or whatever it is that you're comparing the two. But be very particular and understand why it is that you're using these tools, because they are just another tool in your toolkit. And so I think that's one thing that is really important to focus on. You're using these tools to solve a problem, and you're not just using these tools to create a new shiny object.
Right. So as a brand that's eager to get into this space,
Yep.
what's the thought process they should walk through in order to determine whether one of these new immersive technologies has an actual use case that will not just be fun, but could actually deliver business results?
That's right. So That's a really complex question. And so this industry is moving incredibly quickly. And so there's always new technologies coming out. There's always new advancements. And so that's one of the things that we try and provide our clients with. First off is giving them the information they need to make informed decisions. And so I think that's the first place to start, is for folks that are interested in using these technologies, is to either reach out and ask a professional for insight or assistance in that field, or just start doing their own research, right? It's not the same as shooting a video. It's not the same as creating a live show. It's a new form of media. And so to sum that up, I think the most important thing to do is to educate yourself. Read, put on a VR headset, go and see good, go look at good content, go look at bad content, play with this stuff and see what you like and see what you don't like. And that's a great place to start and open your mind to how to start to think about using these new technologies, because in fact they are very new and they have a lot of capabilities once you can kind of get outside the standard box of media that we're used to. So.
And how do you feel about the current state of VR? There's obviously a lot of interest from Silicon Valley and lots of investments. You yourself own a VR company, How far do you see it from becoming mainstream? There's so much buzz now, but is it going to materialize in 1 year, 2 years? Like, how far are we along until almost everyone's hopping in a VR headset every day?
Yeah. I'm going to be a little bold and say that I don't believe that we will all be wearing, I don't think that the average consumer will own a headset. Everybody. They won't be as synonymous as cell phones. VR, wear in your face, headsets as we see them today. They're a little too clunky. They require too much computing power. However, with that said, the advancements in augmented reality are absolutely mind-blowing. If you would have asked me this question 2 weeks ago, I would have told you that I think that we're 5, maybe 10 years away from mass adoption of this technology. I saw some amazing new stuff developed through the Apple AR kit last night that changed my perception on that. And I think that it's a lot closer than we thought before. Some of the stuff that these massive technology companies are able to do with nothing more than a regular forward-facing RGB or just color camera in your mobile device is absolutely mind-blowing. And it's going to revolutionize the way we use our mobile devices. And then the next step of that is going to be a wearable of some kind, whether it's a sexy Google glasses or whatever it is. That is going to be the evolutionary step. And I believe that wearable is going to function as a augmented reality. It's going to be your media device. It's going to function as a set of AR glasses, VR glasses. It's going to help you check your email. It's going to help you, fix your car. It's going to allow us as humans to interact with technology in a much more fluid way. So for the current state of VR, I think it's really important for people to start to focus on real value, creating real value with this technology. We've gotten kind of the adoption cycle of technology always has a little bit of a trough in it before the first wave of major adoption happens. And I think we're hitting that trough currently with virtual reality and a little bit with augmented reality. And so what's really important to keep in mind when these technology adoption cycles are doing their thing is that you need to create real value with this technology and not get away from the gimmicks, get away from the one-offs, get away from we just want to create a really long line at our South by Southwest booth, right? Use this technology to actually fix business problems, to solve marketing, issues, to reach new audiences, to share new stories. And I think if we focus on those aspects of this technology and the power that it does have, then it will absolutely, take over the technology world. So,
what you mentioned about augmented reality and how it's going to allow us to essentially experience the digital world in the physical space. I find that so fascinating because, there's always this argument about how we almost have like two lives and that we get in our phones and we're like trapped on these social networks, which in a way also brings us closer together. Right. But it's like there's this split between like the physical world and the digital world. And it's so interesting how augmented reality is going to be able to blend those together. And it's the internet laid on top of reality.
And it's also going to create new issues and new problems that we haven't even had to consider before. So now, 10 years ago, it was very faux pas to be in public and to be like standing and looking at your phone, or to check your phone.
Or like having
That's
your
right.
earbuds in.
Or to check your phone during a meeting or a conversation. Ooh, God forbid you did that. And now it's become okay. It's become a social norm for us to do these things. You go at any stoplight or intersection downtown, and 90% of the people standing around are looking at their phones. Everybody in the coffee shop while they're waiting for their coffee is staring at their phone. And that's become socially acceptable. And so it's taken time. And I think what's going to be interesting with augmented reality is that the things that we're unaware of, like when I'm wearing glasses and I'm looking at you, but I'm actually reading your LinkedIn profile, and we're very good at, as humans, we're very good at noticing movement in people's eyes. That's how we connect, right? That's how you create an emotional connection, is through the eyes. And so when I see someone's eyes reading information, what will that create? What kind of anxiety, or what kind of, angst might that cause in me when I don't know what you're reading about me? You could be reading a criminal record that I didn't know about, right? And so it's going to create these very interesting psychological and social issues that we'll have to be just very cognizant of, and we'll have to cross those bridges as we come. But it's going to be fun and a challenge at the same time. So.
Yeah, and another aspect of that is also how, yes, there's a certain amount of like antisocial vibe to it. At the same time, I know that through the internet and being able to connect with people who are unlike you, who are different than you, who have different experiences, that live in different countries, that have different beliefs, like it helps to help people find common ground. Sometimes, I know in today's world there's a lot of polarization and stuff, but overall, you can have experiences that you could never have before. And that's one thing I'm really fascinated about with VR, is how it's so immersive that you can almost literally walk in someone else's shoes and experience what they would experience in a way that you could never do before. Have you thought about that aspect of VR at all?
Absolutely. I think that goes back to what we were saying before, is that using these tools properly to tell the story, to create that experience that you want your audience to have. And so I'll give you one example of a project we did recently. And so we had the opportunity to travel to the Middle Eastern region of the world, and we created these virtual reality field trips for an education company. And we got to spend about 14 days or so in Pakistan filming, which was a very interesting experience. The food is phenomenal, by the way. And so what was really interesting about, and the reason that we chose to use 360 film as a medium for that was because we found that there's a very big disconnect between how people think about that part of the world and what it's actually like. And so using 360 video or VR gives the user a sense of presence. And when we have a sense of presence, we start to feel empathy, and we start to understand what it's like to actually be there. We can watch as many news stories as we want on CNN about the Middle East. We can read books, we can look at pictures, but until you give somebody the sensation, until the human mind believes that it's there, until you believe you actually feel that presence of standing on a street in Lahore, for instance, and seeing the people, and you can look around, and it's up to the user on what they want to focus on, and you can basically, it's as if you were standing there minus the smells. It's really kind of tricky to replicate that. And so what that creates is that presence that you can create that's not available in 2D media starts to create empathy in the user, starts to create empathy in the person who's watching and experiencing that particular piece of content. And that is something that you cannot recreate, you cannot do in traditional media. And there's a lot of really interesting studies out there that are studying the power of this technology and how it's actually affecting users' brain wavelengths. And it's actually, on a scientific level, creating a higher level of empathy and a higher level of connection to that story. And that is amazing. And I think what's even more exciting is that we're just getting started with this. This is just the tip of the iceberg. And so as people learn the tools and learn the techniques, and the mass populace becomes more aware of this technology, it's going to absolutely revolutionize a lot of different industries in ways that we can't even understand yet.
Just like any tool, the power can be used for good or for evil.
Yes.
So what are what are some of the dangers of having such an immersive experience? And what are some steps that, or I don't know, some guidelines or things that you think need to be in place so we don't, dig too deep into people's minds and cause negative effects?
And again, that's a very tricky kind of road to cross. I think the most recent example you could look at was like the advancement of modern video games, and so yes, we have power with this technology to eliminate PTSD from our military. We've seen results that are staggeringly good with stuff like that. There's a couple of NFL football teams that are using this technology to diagnose concussions almost instantaneously. Right now it's follow my finger, and it's very simple tests, and they work, but on a scientific level now we can start to use eye tracking and actually
wow.
And so it's crazy what we can do with this, right? So the power is there. But on the opposite side of the spectrum, like you said, we now have a responsibility to use this technology and to use the power of this media properly. And so that's where it becomes a bit of a what is proper, right? Where there's obviously a gray area there. I think the most important thing is, as content creators, as producers of this, as people that want to fund these projects or create these experiences for their businesses, is to use them and just be very cautious and thoughtful of how you do this. Because unfortunately, there will be bad experiences created. There will be negative experiences created, and there will be harmful things created out there. It's early on, I think it's our responsibility as content creators is to make stuff that is for good, that's powerful, that's uplifting, that's thought-provoking. The edgy is fine, right? And controversial is okay. But creating things
that are purposely manipulative in a certain way.
That's absolutely correct. And so, I don't know how you actually stop people from doing that, because we want to keep this, we're having this debate with the internet right now, is we want to keep this an open and free medium. So you can create controversial films, right? Is it, if I want to go stand on the streets of Syria and watch, the tragedies of what's going on there, is that too much, right? Is that a good use of the medium to create that presence for folks so they actually understand what that war is like? Mm-hmm. Or is that desensitizing? Is that too much? Is that too, close to the heart? Does that create too much kind of, is there too much negativity tied to something like that? It's a good question.
Yeah, and I don't think there's any easy answer to it.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So.
Something I've definitely seen are companies that have prior experience in other forms of media, whether it's video or video game design, and they try and slap on the same aesthetics, or they try to take the same perspective and approach to VR as these more traditional forms of media. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't usually work because it's a very different form of storytelling.
That's right.
What do you feel are some of the dangers of taking these old school approaches and just trying to mash it into this whole new technology?
So, it's a good question. It's an interesting question. And we're all still learning, right? I mean, if someone tells you they have 25 years of experience building virtual reality, chances are they're full of it. There's very, very few people that do have the experience in this because the technology has changed and developed so rapidly, right? And so it is a new technology, and there are rules that still need to be forged, and there's rules that still need to be broken. And so, give you an example, when we first started in 360 video, there was a big rule that you never ever move the camera. You never move the camera. That rule's been broken now. We've figured out the ways in order to move the camera strategically without making the audience sick. And so, but with that, to answer your question more precisely, experimentation is good, right? Get a camera, get a headset, start playing, start seeing what works, what doesn't work. But what we have to be really careful of, and if nothing else, this is one of the most important things, in my opinion, about our conversation, is that we have to be very conscious about the experiences that we're creating and we're distributing into the mass populace. Because a lot of people, only give or take, depending on who you ask, about 50% of the people in our country, and we're one of the most advanced countries in the world, have ever even tried VR. And I mean VR is on just like a Google Cardboard. Mm-hmm. And so they haven't even had the opportunity yet to try a full-blown, very well-produced piece of virtual reality content. And if people if the folks with the money, the folks that are going to start producing and really spending the money to push these experiences out into society, if they're producing junk, if they're producing bad experiences, if they don't reach out to professionals, if they don't do their homework, if they don't follow the rules that have been established, we're going to turn people off of this incredibly powerful technology before we ever have a chance to really get it going. Because this is one thing you have to remember about virtual reality. A bad website, you close the tab. A bad something you don't like on Facebook, you just flick the screen. When you have a bad VR experience or a bad 360 video experience, it will make you physically sick.
You can literally throw up.
You can literally get sick. And so that turns people off. I see it all the time where people go, no, I tried VR a few years ago. It made me sick. I won't touch it. And so we have to be very careful that we use this medium creating good content and producing good content, distributing good content. And obviously there's a bit of, it's not a black and white, what is good content? Because we have to be experimental, we have to push the bounds. But to make sure that you're following the established rules and don't repeat the mistakes that other people have already done, because we're moving forward. And so that I think is a very important piece of the puzzle.
So based on your experience, what are some of those core experiences or use cases that brands should be thinking about now, based on the current state of these technologies?
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that question. So one of the things that we always try and preach to the folks that we work with and the folks that we talk to is that VR, AR, and 360 are just another tool in your toolkit, and it's important, and we believe it's a good idea that to use these as part of a larger, integrated marketing campaign. They're their own technologies, but just creating a VR experience, and then that's not going to get your brand more clicks, more engagement, more sales. I think what's really important is the fact that you focus on using these as part of a larger brand, or excuse me, as a part of a larger marketing campaign or experience. And so I believe it was New York Fashion Week had a really good example of this. And so they wanted to engage with younger social media influencer type folks with Fashion Week. And Fashion Week's very expensive, it's very exclusive, and it's hard to get into, right? And so what they did is they used that exclusivity in combination with social media advertising and VR in order to create these really interesting experiences for people. And so what they did is they allowed a select number of young folks that were interested in being part of New York Fashion Week to apply, and they were given a set of Google Cardboard, specially branded, sent out to them, and then they live streamed the 360 and 360, the actual final catwalk show part of the show of New York Fashion Week. And so these young influencers were able to sit front row, experience that show live. They were encouraged to tweet about it, share about it, et cetera, et cetera. And so, it wasn't just live streaming it and throwing it out on the internet. It was a way to have these high-level influencers, these very influential young people, interact with the brand and have this special experience, right? And so they use that as a larger, piece of a marketing campaign that ended up being very successful to them. Another really good example is Volvo. The car brand had some great success with virtual reality test drives. And they didn't just make VR test drives and publish an app and write an article about it. What they did is had a larger integrated campaign. And so they announced this project during the European equivalent of a South by Southwest, a big technology show that so they announced it at a stage where you get a lot of press, right? So now there's people that knew about it. And then they gave away millions of these Google Cardboard headsets. And then every couple of days, they released a new experience to get people to go back in and use that technology again and again and again. And through that campaign, they got a ton of really good articles in some of the the most sought after PR outlets there are. They had something like 175 million web engagements in 2 weeks' time. And what's really interesting about that one is they had over 50,000 potential customers reach out directly to Volvo inquiring about more information on new vehicles. That's 50,000+ new customers reaching out because they use that as part of a larger kind of branding campaign. And so I think that's the sum of that antidote is think about these as tools in your toolkit as a marketer.
Mm-hmm. But it's always part of a larger plan.
We find you have the most success if you're able to use these thoughtfully for a reason in part of a larger campaign. Make sure you have that goal set up front, understand what your target is, build your content to hit that target, and then make sure you follow it up and distribute it and promote it and all the things you would do with a normal piece of content.
For me, it kind of speaks to that larger point of the shift in our society from like hyper-consumerism, where everyone just needs to buy everything, to it's more about having experiences. It's like, what can I go do? What can I experience? What vacations can I have? What moments of awe can I experience? If you have augmented reality glasses, like, do you necessarily need to buy as many things? Because you can like have them, like virtual paintings in your house, so that you can experience the art without actually buying it.
So I think that these technologies are going to allow us to experience more and be more particular about the things that we want to do outside of the VR space. Because, for instance, the simple way to one of the simple examples that we use all the time is tourism and vacation. And we just finished a project around this where we were creating these 360 experiences for different tourist locations. So you want to travel somewhere for your honeymoon, and you've got the entire world to choose from. You have 2 weeks to go anywhere you want. Where would you go? Well, let's say you'd want to go to the Southeast Asian region because you heard it's beautiful. Okay, where, right? Just Indonesia alone has something like 15,000 different islands. And so if we have the ability to go check out some of these places, go experience them firsthand, maybe you'll see things or experience things that you didn't know existed before. And you're like, oh, well, maybe I actually don't really like this part of the world as much as I thought I might. And so you could go have these little mini experiences in other places before you choose on where you really want to go. And so, I think that'll be interesting to see, right? But we're seeing a shift in the way that society chooses to spend their money. We're going into more of what we call the experiential age, as a lot of people call it, where folks are wanting to get outside and do more, have more experiences versus have more things, as you mentioned. And so you're seeing that in a decrease in first-time home buyers for millennials. You're seeing an uptick in travel. You're seeing an explosion in like camping and outdoors type activities. These skydiving, all of these kind of experience type things are starting to gain more popularity, and they're starting to become more sought after. And so, what's interesting with these technologies is it gives us the power to experience some of this stuff without ever having to leave our home. And some of these things, I want to go swim with sharks. Well, is that a safe thing to do all the time? Probably not, right? But you could have that experience, you can right now, in virtual reality, right? And so, and there's other things that, if you're physically unable, right? If you're elderly or you're have a physical disability that doesn't allow you to go do something in particular, now we have completely smashed that door, and you can go do these things. You can have almost any experience that you choose to have, which is really amazing and really powerful. And so, I think it's going to open up doors for us to do more interesting things and have more interesting experiences in our life that we wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. And so,
I want to go swim with sharks.
Yeah, go with the sharks.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ricky, for being on the show. If someone wants to learn more about who you are, what you do, where can they find you online?
So the easiest way to get a hold of us is just Google chocolate milk and donuts, and you can find our website that way. We've got lots of work that we've done in the past there, and we're always happy to have a conversation and coffee and tell you more about what we do and try and help you solve your storytelling problem. So,
thank you so much, man.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for watching VR AR 360 video. It is just such an incredible technology, and one of the main takeaways was that as a brand, you need to understand what the use case is for VR and these other technologies. It's not just using your old school approaches to then apply it to this new form of storytelling. You really need to understand what you're trying to achieve and weave it into that larger marketing campaign. So this is a weekly show, so I encourage you to please subscribe, and we'll see you next time.